Alright, so the Cube trilogy is just a completely fascinating series because I very rarely see anyone talk about the second and third movie in it. The first movie is obviously really well known. It's pretty much a classic at this point. And yeah, but the two sequels are really, there's a lot to say about them, and obviously done with the first two. So I'm just gonna get started and review the trilogy. Yeah, I agree with the general public on this one. I think that the first Cube is absolutely amazing. Well, there's definitely some big complaints that you can have with the movie, mainly around how they handled the character of Kazan, which I think that it wasn't done very well. I think that it was just kind of stereotypical in a very kind of just negative way because they constantly have tons of people just make fun of him relentlessly for his disability, and the actor I don't think had anything at all that was similar. So it just that's definitely the biggest problem with the movie is it's kind of, I don't think that they should have gotten an actor who knew what he was acting with. But otherwise, yeah, I think the first Cube is practically a perfect movie aside from that. And even though the other big complaint that I hear people talk about being that how math heavy the movie is, I personally like that. I think that it adds to the mystery of the series even more, and how the only information that we get about the cube at all is just how mathematically the cube works. I think that that's a pretty unique concept. It uses a new factor that I haven't seen done in a lot of movies before. It's incredibly creative. Also, the movie is so unbelievably impressive for how low the budget was. The budget was about $350,000. They managed to. I mean, it's held up better than so many other movies that had way higher budgets. In particular, I'm gonna have to talk about Saw, which is a movie that I'm not a fan of. I've never been really that big of a fan of James Wan's movies, but in particular Saw. I've always seen this as just kind of a rip-off of Cube that had to triple the budget and managed to age like a tenth as well as Cube has. Cube has held up so much better than that first Saw movie. Saw, the editing is like just, it's like, whoa, what were they thinking in some of those scenes in Saw? But the first Cube movie, really, it was incredibly creative. The special effects are phenomenal. Most of the acting is solid. I get that for a very low budget movie, it's really impressive, and the sets are incredible. The production design is so well done. It's just overall a really unique and really creative movie that deserves pretty much all of the credit that it's getting nowadays, because it was, yeah, I'm really happy that it's getting more credit now, because I think it's a phenomenal movie, and it makes the disappointment of the two sequels so much worse. And we're going to get to that in just a second. I'm just going to be honest, Cube 2 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. This is one of maybe 5 or 6 movies that I don't think that there was a single possible angle that could have worked with taking this approach of a sequel. The other one that comes to mind is The Exorcist 2, where I have no fucking clue what they were thinking in coming up with that as the direction they wanted to follow up the original with. I don't even think the director or the writer or anyone on set understood what they were trying to go for with the 4D aspect of this movie. It's on one hand, almost have a little bit of respect for the fact that no other movie would have the idea of, oh, let's take the sequel and put it in a different dimension than the first movie. That's a unique concept. It's creative. The problem is that they executed it horribly. This movie makes not a single goddamn ounce of sense. I have no clue what anyone was trying to do in this movie. It makes just, I can't reiterate this enough. It is just mind-numbingly confusing. You don't have a clue what's going on the entire movie. And with the other movie, you'd understand a little bit of geometry to understand it. I understand that does add a barrier of access to it that can be kind of difficult, and I understand why someone wouldn't like the movie if math's not their strong spot, which it's not going to be for everyone, so not everyone's going to like that movie. This movie is just impossible to understand. The weird physics 4D approach to it makes no sense. And I know that I've been saying that a lot. If you're gonna watch this movie, it's an incoherent mess. Also, it looks terrible. The thing that's insane is this was directed by the cinematographer of Pulp Fiction. How how did he mess this up so badly? It looks horrible. Every shot is done in such like an obnoxious close-up to add to the claustrophobia because they weren't able to do it with the atmosphere and the sets like last time, because every set in this movie is blindingly white walls that are just makes it so boring. The other movies had the colored walls that it made it so you could distinct between, not distinct, so you could tell the different rooms apart. In this movie, I have no clue what's going on, and the fact that it's just moving around and the whole time travel aspect of it, it is so confusing. This is an incoherent mess of a movie, and while it is incredibly entertaining to watch because the acting is so bad, especially with the older lady character who it's never really made clear if she's just acting, pretending to not know what's going on, or has a clue, or actually understands. It is never clarified. I think the twist at the end it was, it kind of worked. But every single other element of this movie is genuinely horrible. I This is one of the biggest downgrades from the first to the second movie that I've ever seen, and it's insane just how bad this movie is. And it's not even the worst of this franchise. Just a spoiler for this: the two Cube sequels are both in like my top 5 least favorite movies of all time. I should probably make that list someday. But they're, in my opinion, the two of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, Cube 2 Hypercube is a incoherent disaster of a bunch of ideas that could have been done well, but the people didn't. I don't think that anyone understood this movie. It's like the Green Inferno. I don't even think the writer had a clue what they were. I think the thing that I hate about Cube Zero the most, and by far the biggest problem with the movie, is the fact that it's also kind of a shameless ripoff of Saw, which just kind of pisses me off, because the first movie was such a huge inspiration for Saw. Saw almost ripped it off in a way. There's so many elements of Saw that were taken from Cube, and this movie is just a blatant ripoff of the movie that it inspired. First off, the acting, it's terrible. The character motivations make no sense. These are some of the least fleshed out characters I've ever seen. The only thing I can say is that the villain, I think Jax was his name. I think that was his name. He's cool. It's a cool idea. He's very generic, but the guy who played him gave a hell of a performance for how shitty the movie is. Best part of the movie by far, but that isn't saying a lot. The way that the movie replaced the cubes, the numbering system of the cubes with letters, makes no sense. It's just the letter code seems kind of incoherent. It's impossible to tell what anyone's doing. Also, another problem is that this movie's just it's only there for the effects. That's the only thing that you're going to this movie for. The first movie, and hell, even the second, put at least some effort into telling a unique story. No matter how flawed and what a horrible job the second one did at telling a unique story, at least it's creative. This movie has just nothing. It's just an empty void of creativity that's stealing from the movie that took inspiration from the first film. And this is another thing. I don't know what has been going on. I don't know what's up with Ernie Barbarash and how that man consistently either produces or directs some of the worst movies ever made. This is the same guy who produced American Psycho 2. Do not trust Ernie Barbarash with the sequel. He will fuck up the entire franchise and ruin it so that it will never be able to be touched again. Sorry, that sounded harsh, but I've never yet to see that man make a good movie. Yeah, I think that Cube Zero is just it's incredibly boring. The characters suck. The ending, it's so strange. The only thing that I distinctly remember, that's like the easiest fucking signature to forge ever. Is that like everyone's signature? Did writing just change? Also, how, what? Is the cube like underwater? This movie makes no sense to me. I think that I don't even respect it in the terrible way, as terrible as Cube 2 was. At least I have some respect for that movie for doing some creative stuff. This movie just means an empty void with no creativity, just nothing. This has nothing. And I hate this movie. It is maybe my least favorite movie of all time. You know, some other movies get kind of close. This is probably the worst I've ever seen. This series is just so disappointing because I love the first movie, and then you have the second and third one, which just did everything wrong. These are both 1 out of 10s, and the first movie's a 9. It is embarrassing how bad of a failure that those two movies really were. I think that I haven't seen the remake. The remake seems like it could be cool, but I can't find it anywhere online, so I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to watch that. But yeah, thank you for watching, and yeah.